I wasn't even supposed to apply for the job. I mean, it was one of those listings you scroll past, assuming it's out of your league. Big name, fancy title, salary that makes your stomach turn because you know you'll never get it. But I clicked apply anyway, because screw it, right? Worst case, I never hear back. Except I did hear back. And 2 interviews later, I was offered the position of social media manager at one of the fastest growing marketing startups in the city. Their website screamed modern and sleek, with neon accents and candid shots of attractive employees laughing over coffee. I'd never worked somewhere like that. My last job was in a strip mall office that smelled like stale printer ink. So yeah, I said yes. Day 1, I wore my best, I'm chill but also professional outfit. Dark jeans, fresh sneakers, white tee under a blazer. I walked into a converted warehouse downtown with exposed beams, plants everywhere, and a welcome bag already waiting at my new desk. The vibe was cool, casual, too casual. Everyone was hot. I'm not exaggerating, like someone had cast a startup using a dating app. But the person I noticed first? Lucas Vale. The founder. The CEO. The man behind the brand. He was tall, clean-shaven, late 30s if I had to guess, with this quietly intense energy. Like he didn't need to raise his voice to own a room. The kind of guy who doesn't post shirtless pics, but you know he has abs anyway. He wore black jeans and a gray t-shirt that hugged just right. And I didn't meet him until the end of the day. I was gathering my things, about to call it, when someone behind me said, "So you're the new kid?" I turned and almost dropped my reusable water bottle. It was him, Lucas. Yeah, just finished my first day. He looked at me for a moment, not just a glance, a look like he was trying to read something under the surface. "Social team, right?" he asked. "Yeah, Alex," I said, holding out a hand. He shook it, firm grip, his thumb brushing the side of my hand just long enough to make my brain short-circuit. "Good. We need someone who knows what the hell they're doing. Let me know if you need anything." And just like that, he walked away. I spent the rest of the night replaying the interaction in my head, telling myself I was just starstruck, that the weird, lingering eye contact meant nothing. But then, at 10:47 p.m., I got a DM on Instagram. "Lucas, VL, you settled in, okay?" My heart leapt into my throat. I stared at the message, not quite believing it. The CEO, DMing me. Not Slack, not email, Instagram. I typed back, "Yeah, everyone's been cool. Still learning where the good coffee's hidden though." His reply came almost instantly. "That's because I keep it in my office. Perks of being the boss." I stared at the screen, pulse quickening. "Guess I'll have to sneak in sometime," I wrote, not sure why I was flirting. Not even sure if I was flirting. "You don't need to sneak," he replied. "Just ask." I sat there, half smiling, half panicking. Was this happening? Was he just being friendly? Was I reading way too much into this? Then another message came in. "You looked a little nervous when I introduced myself." "Busted," I replied. "You're intimidating." In a hot professor kind of way. I regretted sending it the second I hit send, but he replied with, "That's a new one. I'll take it." Then, "You seem sharp." I like that. That was the moment it shifted. Not the words, the way he said them. Direct. Personal. Like he wasn't just making small talk with a new hire, like he meant it. I bit my lip, thumbs hovering over the keyboard, thinking maybe this job was going to be more interesting than I thought. After that first night, things shifted. Not drastically. Lucas didn't start blowing up my DMs or leaving notes on my desk or anything crazy. It was subtle, but noticeable, at least to me. The next morning, I walked into the office half expecting him to act weird, maybe keep his distance to avoid any HR gray areas. But no, he was perfectly composed, cool, unreadable, businesslike, and yet I caught him watching me. Not staring, just clocking my presence. A glance as I walked past. A slight smirk when I made some dumb comment during the team stand-up. The kind of look that says, "I remember last night." And maybe I liked it. It didn't help that my brain wouldn't shut up about the whole thing. Lucas Vale, CEO, confident, magnetic, gorgeous, and for some reason, paying attention to me. It was driving me insane. At lunch, I sat with Marcus from product and Riley from content. We were talking about the new app launch when my phone buzzed in my lap. I glanced down and saw the Instagram notification. Lucas. VL. You free after 5? I almost dropped my fork. I glanced across the open office. Lucas was at his desk, angled away from the room like nothing was happening. I waited a few seconds before replying. Depends. Is this a coffee thing or a work thing? A beat passed. Then, little of both. My stomach flipped. I tried to stay cool the rest of the day, but it was a mess in my head. I overanalyzed every step, every sentence. I even rebrushed my teeth before heading down to meet him. We didn't go far, just to the cafe on the corner. The one with the moody lighting and overpriced herbal lattes. He ordered a black Americano. I got a matcha, like some kind of nervous intern. We sat by the window, and for a second it felt weirdly normal. Until he said, "You're adjusting fast. I've been watching." My eyebrows shot up. Watching? Professionally, he added quickly, cracking a smile. Mostly, I laughed. That's supposed to reassure me? He shrugged. Just saying. You've got instincts. Most new hires lay low for weeks. You jumped into the client deck review like you'd been here for years. I sipped my drink, trying to play it cool. Guess I didn't get the memo about waiting my turn. I'm glad you didn't. His tone was calm, but his eyes didn't move from mine. It was the kind of look that made you forget what you were about to say. That locked-in focus that's rare outside of movies or dreams. I cleared my throat. So, this little meeting, coffee and compliments? Or is there something I need to worry about? He leaned back in his chair, still watching me. No worries. Just wanted to get a read on you outside the office. Without the audience. There was a long pause. I nodded slowly, unsure what to say. Then he added, casually, also, I think we've got some overlapping interests. The words hung in the air like steam from his coffee. Overlapping how? Lucas tilted his head slightly, like he was deciding how honest to be. I mean, I wouldn't usually message a new hire like that. But I trust my gut, and my gut says, you didn't mind. I hesitated. You're right, I didn't. He smiled, slow and subtle, like he'd just confirmed something. But, I said quickly, this is a weird line, right? I mean, you're my boss. Yeah, he said. That's the thing. Another pause. I'm not going to make this awkward, he said. I've been in this role a long time. I know what's appropriate. And I also know that sometimes two people notice something at the same time. And it's real. I sat back, heartbeat loud in my ears. This doesn't need to mean anything, he added. But if you ever want to grab a drink off the clock, you let me know. It wasn't pushy. It wasn't a game. It was offered, plain and simple, and that was maybe the most dangerous thing about it. We walked back to the office in silence, and I couldn't stop thinking about the way he said off the clock. Nothing changed visibly after that. Lucas didn't treat me differently at work. He didn't favor me. He didn't flirt. But now we had this thing, a charged awareness that lingered between us in every meeting, every hallway interaction, every Slack message that was just a little too casual. And then, 3 days later, he messaged again. Lucas, VL Thursday, after hours, rooftop bar on Grand and 4th, low-key. I stared at the message for a long time before replying. Just a drink? He replied instantly. Just a drink. Unless you want more. Thursday came faster than I expected. All day I tried to pretend it was just another workday. I answered emails, scheduled posts, sat through meetings, pretending I wasn't hyper-aware of every time Lucas spoke. But the closer it got to 5, the tighter my chest felt. Because this wasn't just a drink. This was me willingly stepping into something complicated, risky. The kind of thing you swear you'll never do because you've seen how it ends for other people. And yet, at 5:12 p.m., I was still at my desk, pretending to work while secretly checking my reflection in my phone screen. I didn't want to look like I was trying too hard, but I also didn't want to look like I didn't care. So I compromised, rolled my sleeves, fixed my hair, changed nothing else. If this was going to happen, it was going to happen as me. When I walked into the elevator, Lucas was already there, alone. He looked up from his phone, and something passed between us. Recognition, anticipation, maybe relief. "Hey," he said. "Hey." The doors closed, and suddenly it was just the two of us in a metal box humming quietly as it descended. The silence wasn't awkward, but it was heavy. Charged. "Still on?" I asked, breaking it. He nodded. "Unless you changed your mind." "I almost did," I admitted. That made him smile. "Me too." The rooftop bar was exactly what he'd promised. Low-key. String lights, quiet music, just enough people to blend into. We grabbed a small table near the edge, city light stretching out beneath us. He ordered a whiskey. I got a beer. Something about the simplicity grounded me. For a few minutes, we talked about neutral things, how insane the housing market was, the city, travel, normal conversation, safe territory. I started to relax, just a little. Then he leaned back in his chair and said, "So, ground rules." I raised an eyebrow. "Already?" "Yes," he said calmly, "because I don't want this to get messy, and I especially don't want you to get burned." Something about the way he said that, firm but sincere, made my chest tighten. "Okay," I said. "I'm listening." He ticked them off with his fingers. 1. Nothing happens at work. No flirting, no weirdness, no favoritism. If anything, I'll probably be harder on you. I laughed. Comforting. 2, he continued. You don't owe me anything. Not conversation, not drinks, not attention, ever. I nodded slowly. And 3, he said, his gaze steady on mine. If at any point this feels wrong or confusing or too much, you say so, and we stop. No questions, no drama. The seriousness of his tone surprised me. This wasn't a guy looking for a thrill. This was someone who'd thought this through. "Fair," I said. "My turn?" He nodded. 1. I'm not a secret, I said. I'm not asking to be public or anything, but I won't do the hiding in the shadows thing. He didn't flinch. Good. And 2, I added. If this turns into something real, we deal with it like adults. That earned me a small, genuine smile. You don't mess around, do you? Not when it matters. We clinked glasses. The conversation shifted after that, loosened. He told me about starting the company in his late 20s, the mistakes he made, the burnout he barely survived. I told him about my last job, how invisible I felt, how this new role felt like a second chance. You don't act invisible, he said. Years of practice, I replied. He studied me for a moment, then said quietly, You're not hard to notice. I felt my face warm. As the night stretched on, the space between us shrank. Not physically, but emotionally. We leaned in when we talked, held eye contact a second too long. The city buzzed below us, but the world felt strangely small. At one point I laughed at something he said and instinctively reached for his arm. My fingers brushed his sleeve. We both froze. It was nothing, barely a touch, but it felt like a line being tested. You okay? He asked softly. I nodded. Yeah, just aware. Me too, he admitted. When we finally stood to leave, the moment hovered between us. No rush. No pressure. Outside the bar, under the glow of a street lamp, he stopped. Tonight was good, he said. I don't regret it. Neither do I. A beat passed. Then he leaned in, not all the way. Just enough that I could feel the warmth of him, smell his cologne, sense the restraint it took not to close the gap. Text me when you get home, he said, so I know you're safe, I smiled. You're very bossy for someone off the clock, he chuckled, only when I care. We parted without touching. But when I got home, phone buzzing in my hand, I knew one thing for sure. This wasn't a fling, and that scared me more than anything else. After Thursday night, I became painfully aware of how small an office can feel. Not because anything obvious changed, but because everything did. Monday morning, I walked in with my coffee and my backpack slung over one shoulder, telling myself to act normal. Just another employee. Just another week. No big deal. Lucas was already there. He stood near the glass conference room, sleeves rolled up, talking to Jen. He looked up when I walked past, and for half a second, just half, I saw it. That flicker, that quiet acknowledgement. Then it was gone. "Morning," he said, neutral, professional. "Morning," I replied, matching his tone, and that was it. No lingering looks, no teasing, no private jokes. If anyone had been watching closely, they would have seen nothing. He was exactly what he promised he'd be. My boss, focused, fair, almost intimidating. And somehow, that made it worse. Because now everything was internal. I'd feel his presence before I saw him. I'd hear his voice in meetings and feel it settle low in my chest. When he gave feedback on my work, it was sharp and thoughtful and honest, and I hated how much I wanted his approval. Not because he was the CEO, but because he was him. We didn't message for 2 days. Not even a "how was your weekend?" I told myself that was good, healthy, boundaries. By Wednesday night, I was lying on my couch staring at my phone like an idiot. Then it buzzed. "Lucas. VL. You holding up?" I exhaled, not realizing I had been holding my breath. "Yeah, just busy. You?" "Same. I keep almost messaging you during the day. Then I don't." My heart skipped. Why not? 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Then, "Because I like you, and I don't want to screw this up." I sat up. There it was. Simple. Unpolished. Real. "I like you too," I typed back. "Which is kind of the problem, or the point," he replied. We didn't push it further that night. No flirting. No escalation. Just quiet acknowledgement of something that already existed, whether we named it or not. But once something has a name, it gets heavier. The following week, he asked me to stay late to help prep a client presentation. It wasn't unusual. We were approaching a deadline, but when the office started to empty out, the air shifted. By 7 p.m., it was just the two of us. I sat across from him in the conference room, laptop open, slides glowing between us. He leaned over my shoulder at one point to point something out, close enough that I could feel his breath near my ear. "You okay with this phrasing?" he asked. "Yeah," I said, voice steady, even though my body was anything but. He didn't move right away. For a moment, the distance between us was measured in inches. Then he stepped back. "Good work today," he said quietly. I looked up at him. "You too." Another pause. This one stretched. "I should go," I said finally. He nodded. "Yeah, me too." We walked out together, lights clicking off behind us. In the elevator, the silence returned, thick and familiar. "I meant what I said," he murmured as the doors closed. "About liking you," I swallowed. "I know, and I'm trying to do this right. I see that." He turned to face me fully now. "That doesn't mean this is easy." "No," I agreed. "It's not." The elevator dinged. Street level. Neither of us moved immediately. "Alex," he said, using my name in that careful way he did when something mattered. "Tell me if I'm crossing a line." "You're not," I said honestly. "You're just close to it." A small smile tugged at his mouth. Story of my life. Outside, the city hummed around us. Cars passed. People laughed somewhere nearby. The world kept going, completely unaware of how much effort it took for us not to reach for each other. He stepped back first. "Get home safe," he said. "You too." I watched him walk away, hands in his pockets, posture relaxed but controlled. And I realized something then. This wasn't about temptation. It was about restraint. And restraint, I was learning, could be just as intimate as touch. If restraint was intimacy, Then what came next was a crack in the dam. It started with a win. We landed the client. Big one. The kind that made the whole office buzz. Slack channels lighting up with congratulations and fire emojis. Jen popped a bottle of something cheap but bubbly in the kitchen, and suddenly it felt like a party instead of a Tuesday. Music went on. People lingered. Laughter got louder. Lucas stayed mostly on the edges, talking shop, smiling when people congratulated him, but I could tell he was tired. Not just work tired, the kind of tired that settles deep when you've been carrying something quietly for too long. At some point, he caught my eye from across the room and lifted his glass in a small, private toast. I felt it in my chest. By the time the office thinned out, it was after 8. I was packing my bag when Lucas walked over. "Hey," he said, low. "You heading out?" "Yeah, figured I'd beat the last train." He nodded. "I'm locking up. Walk you down?" I hesitated for half a second, then nodded. "Sure." The stairwell echoed as we descended, the sounds of the city getting louder with each floor. Outside, the night air was cool, sharp enough to wake me up. We stopped on the sidewalk. "Tonight went well," he said. "It did," I agreed. "You should be proud." "I am," he said. Then, quieter, "And I'm relieved." I smiled. "You don't show it much." "That's because if I do, I won't stop." The words hung there. I shifted my weight, suddenly very aware of how close we were. Not touching. Just close enough to feel the pull. "Lucas," I said carefully, "we've been doing a good job. Let's not ruin that." "I know," he said. He stopped himself, exhaled slowly, ran a hand through his hair. "I'm not asking for anything," he finished. "I just needed to say it out loud." I nodded. "Okay." We stood there in silence, the moment stretching thin. Then he stepped back. "Get home safe." I turned to leave. I should have kept walking. But instead, I glanced back. He was still there, watching me, and something in me gave. I crossed the distance in 2 steps and kissed him. It wasn't planned. It wasn't neat. It was quick. Soft but sure, my hand gripping his jacket like I might lose him if I didn't. For a split second, he froze. Then he kissed me back. Just once. Just enough. Then he pulled away. "Alex," he said, breath uneven, forehead resting briefly against mine. "We can't." "I know," I whispered. "I'm sorry." He shook his head. "Don't be. I wanted that." That made it worse. We separated, both of us stepping back like we'd touched something hot. "This changes things," he said. "Yeah," I replied. "It does." He looked torn, jaw tight, eyes dark with something that felt dangerously close to want. "We need space," he said finally. "I agree." "Not forever," he added quickly. "Just enough to reset." I swallowed. "Okay. Can you handle that?" I nodded, even though I wasn't sure. "Good," he said softly. "Because I don't regret that kiss. But I refuse to let it cost you your job. Or me, my integrity." That word, integrity, hit harder than anything else. "I respect you," I said. "That's why I did this wrong thing the right way." He huffed a quiet laugh. "You make no sense." "Get used to it." This time, when I walked away, I didn't look back. The next few weeks were quiet. Too quiet. No DMs. No late-night texts. No lingering looks. Lucas became even more professional than before, if that was possible. Meetings were efficient. Feedback was clean. Neutral. And I told myself this was the right thing. Until one afternoon, as I was heading out, he stopped me near the elevators. "Alex," I turned. "There's a conference in Denver next week," he said. "I need someone from social to come with me." My heart stuttered. "I was thinking you." I searched his face. "Is this okay?" He met my gaze steadily. It's work. Strictly. A pause. And after, he added, quieter, we'll see where we stand. I nodded. Okay, I said. I'll go. As the elevator doors closed behind me, my hands were shaking. Because space hadn't killed the feeling. It had sharpened it. If distance was supposed to dull things, Denver did the opposite. The flight out was early. Too early for small talk, which was probably for the best. Lucas and I sat across the aisle from each other, laptops open, headphones in. To anyone watching, we looked like two coworkers traveling for business. Efficient, focused, normal. But every time the plane hit turbulence, I felt it in my chest. Because I was acutely aware of him. The way he crossed his ankle over his knee. The way he frowned slightly when he read emails. The way his jaw tightened when he concentrated. I knew all of it now, noticed it without trying. At the hotel, we were handed key cards. 2 rooms. Separate floors. Good. Necessary. Disappointing. The conference itself was non-stop. Panels, meetings, networking dinners. We worked well together. Too well. There was an ease between us that hadn't existed before, like the tension had sharpened our focus instead of distracting us. You handled that Q&A perfectly, he told me afterward, as we walked back to the hotel through the cold evening air. Learned from watching you, I replied. He glanced at me, something unreadable flickering behind his eyes. Careful. I'm starting to think you don't need me, I smiled. That's not true. The words carried more weight than I intended. That night, I lay awake in my hotel room, staring at the ceiling, replaying everything. The kiss. The distance. The way he stood just a little closer to me now, like the space between us was shrinking, whether we wanted it to or not. Around midnight, my phone buzzed. Lucas. VL. Are you awake? I stared at the screen. Yeah. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. I'm not handling this as well as I thought I would. My heart started pounding. Me neither. A pause. I keep thinking about that night. And how fast you walked away. I swallowed. If I hadn't, I wouldn't have stopped. Another pause. Longer this time. Can I come up? The question sat there, heavy and dangerous. I knew what it meant. Knew what it could lead to. Knew that once we crossed that line, there was no pretending this was just tension anymore. I typed. Deleted. Typed again. We said we'd be careful. I know, he replied. I promise I won't touch you if you don't want me to. That promise, soft, respectful, was what broke me. Doors unlocked, I wrote. The knock came less than a minute later. When I opened the door, he stood there in jeans and a hoodie, hair slightly damp like he'd just showered. He looked human, less CEO, more man. We didn't speak at first. He stepped inside, the door closing quietly behind him. The room felt smaller instantly. I shouldn't be here, he said. I know, but I am. Yeah, silence stretched between us. Thick, electric. I don't want to hurt you, he said finally. You won't, I replied. Not by wanting me. That did it. He kissed me slowly this time. No rush, no desperation, just intention. His hands stayed at my waist, grounding, like he was making sure I was real. I kissed him back, fingers curling into his hoodie, pulling him closer. When we finally pulled apart, foreheads touching, we were both breathing hard. This doesn't change tomorrow, he murmured. I know. This doesn't mean we ignore the complications. I know. But right now, he said, voice low, I want this. So do I. We moved to the bed, still careful, still checking in with glances and pauses. Nothing felt rushed. Nothing felt wrong. It felt inevitable. Afterward, we lay side by side, not touching at first, just breathing. I didn't plan this, he said quietly. Neither did I. He turned to look at me. but I don't regret it. I met his gaze. Me neither. Morning came too soon. We dressed separately, silently agreeing that whatever had happened stayed in the room. In the lobby, we were back to professional. Polite. Controlled. On the flight home, he leaned across the aisle just once. "Thank you," he said softly. "For what?" "For trusting me," I nodded. "Don't make me regret it." He smiled. "I won't." But as the city came back into view beneath the plane, reality crept in. Because wanting someone is easy. Figuring out what comes next, that was the hard part. After Denver, things changed. But not in the way I expected. We returned to the office with the usual hustle of post-conference work. New ideas, client follow-ups, team reports. But underneath the surface, everything felt different. The tension that had been simmering for weeks was no longer just a quiet hum. It was louder now, more pronounced. For the first time since I'd started at the agency, I felt aware of everything I did. Every glance Lucas gave me. Every word he spoke. Every email he sent. And it wasn't just the usual boss-employee dynamic anymore. It was something else. Something unsaid, but mutual. Like we were walking on a line we couldn't quite see, but knew was there. It wasn't the awkward, electric silence I expected after what happened in Denver. No, we managed to be professional. We talked about work. We collaborated on client presentations. We even went to the same meetings. But underneath it all, there was a shift. A shift that neither of us seemed ready to acknowledge out loud. It wasn't until Thursday that things finally broke. It started with an innocuous message on Slack, a simple task assigned to me for the day. Nothing unusual. But the way he worded it, the directness, the lack of formality, made my stomach tighten. "Lucas, VL, can you come by my office after 4? I need your input on something." I read the message twice. The casualness of it, the tone. It felt intimate, like an invitation, though I knew it wasn't. I sat at my desk for the rest of the afternoon, trying not to think too much about it. But I knew what was coming. I knew that something was coming, and I wasn't sure if I was ready for it. When 4 p.m. hit, I grabbed my notebook and made my way to his office. I didn't knock, just walked in, as I had 100 times before. But this time, Lucas wasn't at his desk. He was standing by the window, looking out at the skyline, arms crossed over his chest. His posture was tense, his jaw clenched. "You wanted to see me?" I asked, my voice suddenly unsure, like I'd forgotten how to act around him. He turned, face neutral but eyes dark with something unreadable. "Yeah." There was a long pause. "I've been thinking about us," he said, his voice low, measured. "And I don't want to make this harder than it already is, but I think we need to talk." I swallowed, suddenly aware of how close I was to him. "About what?" "About the space," he said, his gaze flickering to the floor before meeting mine again. "The space we've been keeping between us." I nodded, trying to stay calm, trying to hide the nerves twisting in my stomach. "We agreed to keep things professional. I know," he said, stepping closer, his voice dropping an octave. "But that doesn't mean it's easy. And I don't think we're being fair to each other by pretending like nothing's happened." The air between us felt thick. I could hear my own breath, feel the tension in the room. "You're not wrong," I said, trying to find the right words. "But we both agreed to wait, to think about this carefully. And You're right," he interrupted, taking another step closer. "But I can't keep pretending I don't feel it. I can't keep pretending you don't feel it." I froze. "I do." His eyes softened for a fraction of a second, and then his expression turned serious again. "Then we need to make a decision, because I can't keep walking around pretending this isn't happening. Either we do this or we pull back. No more halfway." I felt a knot tighten in my chest. This wasn't just about the office anymore. This wasn't just about professionalism. This was about us. "I don't want to lose you," he said, his voice so quiet now it was almost a whisper. "But I won't lose myself either." I took a deep breath. "We can't rush this." "No, we won't," he said, a small smile tugging at his lips. "But I think it's time to stop pretending we don't want to take the next step." I nodded slowly, the weight of his words sinking in. Okay. His gaze softened. Okay. There was a long silence, filled with the quiet hum of the city outside, the unspoken understanding between us hanging in the air. And for the first time since Denver, it felt like we were both on the same page. Lucas stepped back, letting out a breath he'd apparently been holding. "We'll figure this out," he said. "Slowly, together." "I can do that," I replied. He smiled again, a genuine smile, one that reached his eyes. Good. We didn't touch. We didn't close the distance between us. But somehow, in that moment, everything felt different. It wasn't just about the space anymore. It wasn't just about keeping things professional. It was about something bigger, something neither of us had the words for yet, but both of us could feel. As I walked back to my desk, I felt lighter, but also heavier, because I knew that whatever was between us now would never go back to the way it was before. And maybe that was the hardest part. Once you say something out loud, you can't unhear it. That was the problem. After that conversation in Lucas's office, I couldn't go back to pretending this was just tension or timing or bad luck. We'd acknowledged it, named it. Not love, not yet, but something real enough to demand attention. And real things don't sit quietly. The next few weeks were careful in a new way. Not stiff, not distant, intentional. We didn't text every night. We didn't sneak glances like teenagers. Instead, we carved out small, deliberate moments. A coffee outside the office on Saturday morning. A walk through the park after work, talking about everything except us until the silence made it impossible not to. The rule was simple: honesty without impulse. Harder than it sounded. One night, we were sitting on opposite ends of a bench near the river, city lights reflecting off the water. It was cold enough that our shoulders nearly touched just for warmth. "I've been thinking about something," Lucas said. "That sounds dangerous." He smiled. "Usually is." I turned toward him. "Okay, what?" "This power dynamic," he said. "I don't like it. Even if we're careful. Even if we're respectful." My stomach tightened. "Where is this going?" "I talked to legal," he said calmly. That surprised me. "You did?" "Yes, hypothetically," he added quickly. No names, no details. And there are two ways to handle something like this responsibly," he said. "One is distance. Total. No contact outside work. No ambiguity." I exhaled slowly. "The other," he continued, "is transparency and restructuring." I looked at him sharply. "Restructuring how?" "I step out of your reporting line," he said. "Immediately. You move under Jen full-time. No dotted lines. No gray area." I stared at him, stunned. "That's a big move," I said. "I know." "And risky," I added. "Yes, and you'd do that," I said carefully. "For a maybe?" Lucas turned to face me fully. "No. I'd do it because I don't want to build something meaningful on a foundation that could hurt you." The sincerity in his voice knocked the air out of me. "This isn't about wanting," he said. "It's about choosing." I looked down at my hands, heart pounding. "You don't owe me this," I said quietly. "I know," he replied. "I'm not offering it out of obligation. I'm offering it because I don't want to wonder 5 years from now what would have happened if I'd been braver." I swallowed hard. "And what if it doesn't work?" I asked. "What if we do all this and it falls apart?" He nodded once. "Then it falls apart honestly, not because we were careless." Silence settled between us, thick but not heavy. I thought about my old job, how small I'd felt, how invisible. I thought about how Lucas looked at me, not like an employee, not like a risk, but like someone he chose to see. "I need to know something," I said finally. "Anything." "If I say no," I asked, "if I choose safety, Will you respect that? Without hesitation, he said yes. That answer mattered more than everything else. I stood up, hands shoved into my jacket pockets, pacing a few steps before turning back to him. I've played it safe my whole life, I said. I've avoided messes, avoided risks, avoided wanting too much. He watched me quietly. And I'm tired of it, I continued. I don't want to look back and realize I talked myself out of something real because it scared me. I stopped in front of him. So, I said, heart racing, if you're willing to do this the right way, so am I. Lucas stood, slow and deliberate, like he didn't want to rush this moment. Are you sure? He asked softly. Yes. He let out a breath that sounded like relief. Then we do this openly, he said, carefully, with respect. And if it ever stops feeling right, we stop. I finished. He smiled. Not the guarded one, the real one. Come here, he said. This time, when he kissed me, there was no hesitation. No guilt, no urgency. Just warmth and certainty, and the quiet thrill of choosing each other with eyes wide open. A month later, the org chart changed. No rumors, no drama, just a clean transition. And when someone eventually asked, casually, curiously, if Lucas and I were together, he answered before I could. Yes, he said, we are. No apology, no justification, just truth. And for the first time in my life, I realized something. The right person doesn't make your world smaller. They make it bigger and ask you to step into it with them.